right. Hey, what's up, guys? Happy Friday. You're almost to the weekend. You just finished the classwork, I'm hoping. Maybe use the answer key, which I already have up top of here, to help double check your answers and make some sense of this here. Because I know that when we did this back in September, we did this on September 16th. I thought these were good problems to practice to sort of preview solving a little bit. But we tried to solve some absolute value equations back on September 16th, and it just went okay, right? Like a lot of people were kind of overwhelmed by it and not a lot of solving this year. But anyways, we're going to talk about it right now. I'm going to re-give you the three notes, right? Just three things you got to keep in mind when you're trying to solve an absolute value problem. That's a little bit different than just solving by undoing the way you usually solve an equation. So I'll review those things. I need to see this in your notes, and hopefully I need to see, maybe come up with your own example or something like that. That would be kind of nice too. I'm just going to do problem 380 with you guys here. So anyways, we have the answers up top. I hope you went through them. I hope you're reminded, like, we've done this before. We've solved the absolute value problems here. If not, pay close attention to this. Take really good notes, and let's get it now. Okay. So check it out here. What I got here, September 16th, notes on solving absolute value equations. I break this down into 3 steps. That's it. 3 steps. I got absolute value here. What do I got to do? I got to think to myself, well, do I have my absolute value isolated? Okay, that's step one. Isolate absolute value on one side of equals. The reason why you want to isolate that, right? You just want to have an absolute value of something equal to a number, because the reason why you want to do that is because what absolute value is, if you remember the definition of absolute value from chapter 1, absolute value is a number's distance from 0. So we know that here, this expression 7 minus 8x, that expression, that thing that we have in absolute value, the absolute value of 7 minus 8x is 1. So 7 minus 8x, its distance from 0, right? Whatever 7 minus 8x, if we take 7, we minus 8 times whatever to it, we get some number. That number's distance from 0 is 1. Okay, so then what do we know about 7 minus 8x? Well, its distance from 0 is 1. How many numbers on a number line have a distance of 0 from 0 of 1? Well, on a number line, these are the two numbers that have an absolute value of 1. Positive 1, its distance from 0 is, well, that's 1 unit. Negative 1, its distance of 0 is 1 unit. Remember, distances are always positive. You can't go, if you go backwards, you're still covering distance, right? There's no such thing as negative distance. I'm always like 3 feet away from something, 2 feet away from something, 6 feet away from something. I'm never like negative 2 feet away from something or negative 6 feet away from something. So anyways, you want to isolate the absolute value on one side of equals. Okay, so your problems today, you already had the absolute values isolated, right? These are easier problems than maybe I even saw earlier in the semester here. Step one, when that's going to come into play, is going to be with some of the problems we saw earlier, which I know are hard for people here, is that if you have some garbage on the outside of absolute values. So if I had 5 plus the absolute value of 7 minus 8x is equal to 1, what I want to do there first would be to isolate the absolute value on one side of equals. So I would want to, this is how I would solve this problem. I would subtract 5 from both sides first. Remember, solve by undoing, right? Doing the opposite. We solve equations by doing the opposite. Okay. So, anyways, I don't have to do that. I already have absolute value isolated. Another tricky thing that we see a lot of times too is this one right here, where the absolute value would be divided by something. Ooh, how do you want to do that, right? So I want to isolate my absolute value. Well, I would multiply both sides by 3, right? That's the opposite of division. So, anyways, we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so put down your notes, isolate absolute value. You want to just get to the absolute value by itself, because then that thing in absolute value, it's either going to be equal to 1 or negative 1, because this distance from 0 is 1. So that means this thing's distance from 0 is 1. It's got to either represent negative 1 or 1. Okay, so let's do this here. The second thing that we're going to do in problems like this, second thing you got to remember is, once you get that absolute value by yourself, you unpack it. Unpack it into 2 equations. Okay, 2 equations. Unpack here. This is what I want you to actually visually remember unpacking. Okay, unpacking means take it out of the absolute value. And if I'm going to take it out of the absolute value, this thing has got to equal, has to have an absolute value of 1. And only 2 numbers have an absolute value of 1. 1 and, drum roll please, negative 1. Those are the 2 things that 7 minus 8x could represent, because if we took the absolute value of 7 minus 8x, we would get 1 as an answer. So absolute value of 1 is 1. Absolute value of negative 1, right? If this were negative 1 here, we would get the 1 returned here. That equation would be true, okay? So we unpack into 2 equations, that's it. And then finally, we just solve both equations, okay? You were doing solving earlier in the assignment. Hopefully you got some practice with your groups. Remember what I say about solving. Solving it just involves doing the opposite. Okay, doing the opposite. So now you stick to your normal solving rules. These are two-step equations. These aren't too hard. We got some negative symbols. That's a little bit hard here to remember what to do with negatives a lot of time. But I think you'll get these ones here. Okay, doing the opposite. What I say is I got x here. What's happening to x? Well, negative 8's multiplied to x, and the 7 looks like it's got added there. So what I say here, when you're doing the opposite, you start away. Start away from the variable. Get rid of the garbage that's sort of like not really that close to the x here. So what you do first is get rid of that 7. This is a positive 7. How do I get rid of a positive 7 that then we subtract 8x from it? Well, I simply take it away. I subtract 7 from both sides, okay? I'm going to do that in both equations. Okay, why? Well, I have the same expression here. I got to clean this up. I got to isolate x on both equations. I got to solve both equations here. Okay, so I subtract 7 from both sides. That becomes a 0. One thing that a lot of people forget is that, well, that's a negative here. Ooh, the negative comes down as well. Negative 8x would equal 1 minus 7. That's a negative 6. Okay, negative 7 minus 7, that's 0. And then I have negative 8x over here equal to, well, negative 1. And you take away 7 more away. So we're already below 0 if you're at negative 1. And then you got to move 7 units that way. Okay, so 7 units down, subtract 7 from it. So if we're at negative 1, we take 7 more away. We're at negative 8. Okay, now that's kind of some tricky mental math. So you always have your calculators out if you want to do it a little more quickly. Okay, now I'm just going to solve this equation. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8, and I will get my 2 solutions. Absolute value problems usually have 2 solutions. Why? Well, a number, right? An absolute value of a number typically has 2 solutions, right? Because the negative and the positive version of a number would have the same absolute value. Okay. The only exception to that is the number 0. The number 0 only has one absolute value. Okay. And that would be the absolute value of 0 would be 0 here. Okay. So here we go. We're solving here. Negative 8 divided by negative 8. Well, we made a 1, and that's good. We want to solve for 1x. Negative 6 divided by negative 8. Well, that's the same as positive 6 over positive 8, right? There's 2 negatives here. So our answer is going to be positive. And 6/8 simplifies to 3/4. Okay, right? 6/8, 2 goes into 6, 2 goes into 8, so 3/4 is something we're our final answer. Okay, so hopefully you know how to simplify fractions there. I don't think I really need to go over that here. Okay, divide both sides by negative 8. I get x is equal to negative 8 divided by negative 8. Awesome. Anything over itself, a number over itself always equals 1. Good thing at the identity property of division here. Not the identity property of division. I forgot what property of division that is here. Anyways, no worries here. We'll get the answer here. So there I got my answer. I'm going to put or here. X can be 3/4. If 3/4, it's going to make the equation true. Or x could be 1, and it's going to make the equation true. And there it is. There's your solution set. Thank you guys for watching it here. So I want to see an example of this fully shown out. Show each step, and also write the 3 steps that you have right here in your notes, and then you're good to go. And then you're on to homework. Message me if you have any questions. Hope you guys have a good weekend. Bye.